Well, hi there. It's Monday and time for another Monday Mastery. It's Monday, September 18th, already halfway through the month of September. I'm your host, author, and dating coach Rick Sodebeer, and I'm here to help you walk through the sometimes murky waters of dating and relationships. And hope you all had a great weekend and a good week last week. It's turning out to be a beautiful week. It was chilly here last week in Upper Michigan. And just in the last couple of days, the leaves have really started to change color here. They've been changing color since July, but they've really started to pop the last couple of days because we've had some weather well below 50 degrees. In fact, I think this morning when I woke up, it was about 40 or 41. So, anyway, it's fall and it's about time for me to migrate south. Hey, Jacqueline, glad to see you're here. Hope you're doing well. And today's topic is what does it take to find a soulmate? And that is something that I coach people on, and how to get into that mode of thinking, and to eliminate the some of the key mistakes that well, I'm glad you you've just been traveling a lot, Jacqueline. Jacqueline says she's glad to get here finally. So I know you have a fun job, and or at least it's at least it appears from the outside, from those of us looking in. And anyway, so what does it take to find a soulmate? And probably one of the first things that I always go over with people is to be mentally and emotionally prepared. It's you have to be mentally up for dating, because dating can be tough, and it can be discouraging over a period of time. And Jacqueline says, "I always want to hear you, but sometimes it's never possible." I understand. That's what happens when you fly around the world. Anyway, um, it takes it you have to get yourself in the right frame of mind. And when you're newly divorced, it can be exciting, and you want to get out there, you want to date, but you just went through a tough divorce. You are upset with your ex, and in fact, you're probably upset with all of the opposite sex. One of the things that I hear quite commonly is that all men are the same. They just want a nurse or a purse, or they just want sex, or whatever the excuse is. But I also hear the opposite. All women are high maintenance. All women are whatever. You pick the you pick the adjective. And it can be true for some, but it's not true for all. But the point here is that we need to make sure that when we get into the dating world, we have a good attitude. We're not dating with a chip on our shoulder. That's one of the worst things that you can do, is be angry. And I've dated a lot of women over the years, and there's quite a few out there. And I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands, of women over the years that that come out and get into the dating world, and they just have this chip on their shoulder. They're angry, they're negative, and it just destroys their ability to find a good man. And the same thing goes for I talk to men, and I've talked to men that say the same thing. They come out with a chip on their shoulder, and they think that all women are out to get their pension plans. All women are out to get their money. They want to be taken care. It's not true. And especially when you're saying all, or always, or, uh, but that's a conversation for another time. It's a, it's a, it's an attitude, it's a mindset that not all men are like your ex, not all women are like your ex. And it takes some discernment, it takes some practice, it takes some learning. And one of the things that when looking for your soulmate, you have to be looking for the right things. What are the right things? Well, it's different for everyone. What's important to me, what's important is going to be different than what's important to you, and it's going to be different than what's important to Jacqueline. Now, the idea of finding your soulmate is to find that person that has similar wants, needs, and desires to match yours. Because the more things you have in common, the the smoother your relationship, the more compatible you are. Because the more things you have in common, later on down the road, when things start to happen, life happens. There's going to be a job loss. There's going to be a death in the family. There's going to be car problems. There's going to be stresses. There's going to be uh, appliances break down, and all of a sudden you've got a broken refrigerator, and all the food is spoiled. All of these things put stresses on the relationship, and the more things you have in common, the easier it is to work together. And as long as you're working together in the same direction towards the same goals, and you don't necessarily have to have identical goals, but you have to have some commonality, some common goals that lead you down the same path, that lead you in the same direction. I mean, if you're both going in divergent directions, it's hard to build a solid foundation. It's it's something that I see all too often. I saw that in when I was married. My ex and I had different paths, different dreams, different goals. She went along with most of mine, but they weren't hers, they were mine. And she tried to be supportive, I'll admit that, but in the end, there were just too many differences that caused us to go in different directions. So, there also has to be a desire to be out there, to be dating, to find your soulmate. And that desire has to be omnipresent, I guess. And it's something that even in the bad times, that, and there's going to be bad times. We all run into bad dates. But if you're dating from dating intentionally and dating from a position of power. And when I say from a position of power, I mean that you know exactly what you want and what you don't want. Your must-haves and your deal breakers will come into will be the boundaries. They'll be the standards that you set for entry, I guess, into your world and entry into your dating life. So that's why it's so important to be crystal clear about what you want. And so many people that I talk to, especially the first time I talk to them, I ask them, what are they looking for in a relationship? And they say, well, I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want somebody that smokes. I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want a drinker. I don't want a drug user. They know more about what they don't want than what they do want. And when we dive into some of this stuff, it's the reticular activating system that causes us to focus and to start spotting the things that it causes us to start seeing the things that we're focused on. And if we're focused on the negative aspects of dating, And that's what I started to say, is that so many people come to me, and when I start talking to them, they complain that all they're finding are people like their ex, people that have issues that remind them of their ex. And whether they're smokers or drug users or alcoholics or whatever it is, it's they it's because you're focusing on the negative. Now, when you and Jacqueline, you got it exactly right. She says that's what you will attract. Exactly. When you're focusing on the negative, that's exactly what you'll find, and that's exactly what you'll attract. So the idea is to turn those things around. Take a look at the things that you don't want. How can you turn those into must-haves? If you don't want a smoker in your life, rather than saying, I don't want a smoker, you might say, must be smoke free. That's just an example. And when you do that to your list of negatives, everything that you don't want, you'll come up with a list of must-haves, and you'll come up with a lot of other things that you're looking for and want in your next relationship. But the idea is that it has to be written in the positive, and it has to be written down. It has to be written in the positive. Because when you're focusing on the positive, those are the characteristics that you're going to spot and you're going to attract. Now, when you're in the dating world, there's going to be a lot of people that approach you, especially if you're doing online dating, or if you're in the social, if you're very socially active, you'll be approached by a number of people. And you'll have to use your must-have and deal breaker lists as your gatekeeper, so to speak. If they don't appear to have the things that you're looking for, or they present any of your deal breakers or warning signs of not a good fit, then there's no point in accepting the date. And it's an important tool that you can have. And again, this needs to be written down. It needs to be in your purse. It needs to be in your wallet. It needs to be on your phone. It needs to be on your laptop or your notepad or whatever, however you keep notes, however you keep track of these things, because you can't keep it in your head. You can't keep all of these things, your list of must-haves and your deal breakers, actively at the forefront of your mind. They get buried, they get lost. You get into the raging hormones of infatuation, and those are the little critters that are floating around in your brain, that the dopamine, the serotonin, the oxytocin that causes you to be attracted to somebody. And I was having this conversation with a coaching client last week about how all these things come together and cause you to be attracted to somebody, and it could very well be the wrong relationship. And that's why you need to step back out of the infatuation and as I call, the raging hormones of infatuation, and be able to look at your list in writing. If you try to figure it out in your head, or if you try to keep that in your head, it's just not going to work. You're going to forget half of what's important to you. And the other part of that is that as you date people, as you meet people, you're going to find characteristics or traits that say, yeah, I want that in my next relationship, or no way do I want that in my relationship. So again, this becomes a standard bearer, or a gatekeeper, or boundaries that keep you on task, on focus for what you really want in your next relationship. And it's so important to stay focused, because it's so easy to get sucked into a relationship. He might have some good qualities or good characteristics, and then there's a pile of garbage over here that you have to deal with. And the longer you stay hey, Geneva, thanks for joining in. Oh, I hope it. Geneva says, hopefully her service doesn't kick her off tonight. I'm hoping you're able to stay, but just keep logging in, and sometimes what I found is you have to just log out completely and then log back in. So hopefully you can stay with us tonight. Anyway, so it's again, we're the must have and deal breaker list need to be written down, because all of these things that that you come across, all of the things that are important to you, will get lost if you try to hold them in your brain. How many of you have, and just as a simple example, how many of you have written a list and for of groceries and gone to the grocery store, forgot your list, and then only came home with about half of what you needed and about a dozen things that you didn't need? So these lists, your must have and deal breaker, work exactly the same way. It keeps you focused. It keeps you on track. It keeps you out of the bad relationships. It keeps you out of a lot of the bad dates. You can't tell every time what a date is going to, how a date is going to turn out, because especially if it's somebody you've never met before, it's easy to just run through your list and just make sure that you know off the top of your head what's important to you. And then when you get into the dates, you can start mentally checking off a lot of the things. Does he have this, or does she have that? Does she present any of my deal breakers or warning signs? And if they do, it's easy enough to just say, hey, you're a great guy, you're a great woman, wonderful woman, but yeah, I just don't see this going anywhere because I'm not feeling a connection. I and I've done that on through online, on our first phone call. When things pop up, there's no sense in my opinion, there's no sense in dragging it out any further. When they start presenting, themselves and sharing about themselves, and you say, oh, that's a deal breaker right there. And it's something that you have to pay attention to. Um, Again, you have to be an active participant. You have to be out there. You can't be sitting at home. You have to have a desire to be social. And it doesn't necessarily mean hanging at the bars. But that's still a reasonable place to meet people, especially if there's music, there's dancing. And ladies, don't be afraid to go with just a couple of friends. You don't have to go with 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 ladies, unless you just don't want to be approached, because it is very difficult for ladies to be approached by a guy when when you're in a big group. It's just a such an intimidating factor. So if you're going to go out with just one or two of your friends. If you want to meet people, if you don't want to meet people and just hang with your friends, fine, go out with a dozen women, or a dozen friends. Same things with the guys. Just you have to set yourself up for opportunities, to present themselves. When you block opportunities, or eliminate the opportunities of being able to meet somebody, your odds of success go down, obviously, or said Captain Obvious. But you have to be an active participant. Again, you can't be sitting at home saying, God will bring the right one to me. Well, he will, but you still have to do your part. You have to be out there. And, I would love to say that churches are a great place to meet people, but what I've found is that through participating in a variety of different church groups in a number of different churches, that churches tend to cater to for lack of better terms, the emotionally handicapped. It may be that they could be just recently out of a marriage. They could be still hurting from the loss of the death of a spouse. So I'm not trying to downplay that, but there are a lot of people. This is something that you have to be careful of, that when you come out of a tough marriage, when you lose a spouse, it's you have to grieve, but you also have to heal. You have to recover from the loss of that relationship. Whether it's a death or divorce, it doesn't make any difference. It's the loss of a relationship, and you need to preserve yourself. You need to work through. You need to start figuring out who you are now. Especially the longer the relationship, the more layers you have to peel back. The more you've morphed, or the more you've changed to try to maintain that relationship. And we all go through that. We marry somebody, or we get into a long-term relationship with someone, and all of a sudden they're not happy with this, or they're not happy with that. So we change. Or we adjust. And pretty soon, several years down the road, we're not the same person that we were when we first got into the relationship. It could be they don't like your sense of humor. That was the problem with one of the problems my ex had with me. She didn't like my sense of humor. Well, you should have figured that out 10 years before we got married. Anyway, but it takes time to peel back the layers to figure out who we are again. And you can't rush that. I remember I was so excited when my divorce was finally final. I could go out and date and and I'll never forget. I was just within my first year of divorce, and I was out listening to a band and dancing, and met a couple of women from that were out, and they said, "Well, how long have you been divorced?" And I said, it was 6 months or a year, and they just rolled their eyes and said, "Oh, fresh meat." And I was like, "Hey, come on." But they were right. I hadn't processed all of the things that I needed to go through yet. That was going to take me another couple of years, because I was with my ex for 25 years, and it took me the better part of 4 years to go through that, and to improve, and to peel back the layers to figure out who I was and what I wanted to be, and what I wanted to be when I grow up. And so that's part of how all this came about, is that I'm here because all of the things that I've been studying over the years, all the self-help and the relationship improvement, migrated or all came together at this time when I started to recognize how much divorce there was, and how tough it is to go through and to get back into the dating world. Where do you start? How do you start over again? And all of these things that I've had to go through, peeling back, and there's only so much that I can help you with. There are things that, like the grieving and the healing process, that's something you have to do on your own. You can't really rush that. You can't really, you can't really say, "Okay, I'm healed," and then move on. Jacqueline says, "Have to run, Rick. So sorry. Let's chat soon." Glad you could. Glad I could at least finally listen to you. Always look for look. Look forward. I'm thinking that's looking forward to listening to you. I'm guessing you're talk texting. Well, Jacqueline, thanks for joining in, and it was. I thought there was some airline language in there, so anyway, I let we'll catch up later. No problem. You have a great evening. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Anyway, it's there. It just takes time to peel back your layers, and you peel back those things at your own pace. And you're going to find things as you go. You're going to find new trigger points. You're going to find things that cause you to get upset. You're going to find things that that your ex did or the ex previous to that did that caused you to get angry that you never really dealt with. And so it's important to be able to discover those things before you get into a new relationship. Uh, uh, Jacqueline says that's the problem. I've had too much radiation. Huh. We'll talk. Anyway, it's these are all things that you have to take into consideration. And again, it goes back to being emotionally healthy, emotionally and mentally healthy, so that you present your best self, and and uh, you're you're ready to step into that. You're ready to step into that next relationship, but you can't do it when you're harboring a lot of angst, a lot of anxiety, a lot of anger, a lot of hatred for your ex. And even if it's just your ex, even if it's not the whole same sex thing, as your ex, even if you're just hanging on to all that anger and hostility towards your ex, that comes through, especially new in the relationship, because guess what, every relationship eventually turns around to how you don't like, how you don't, what they did to you, what problems they created for you, yada yada yada. So it's something that you have to be free of before you start dating seriously. I'm not saying you can't date, but just don't date seriously until you work through those things. It's just a pile of crap that you bring to the table that nobody else wants to deal with. And as much as as much as we'd all like to be open-minded and help people walk through, I can only be a white knight to a certain extent, and that's really all guys want to be, is they want to be your knight in shining armor, and we expect you to be our queen. But you can't be our queen if you're too busy dealing with the negativity and the hostility of a previous relationship. It just doesn't work. Um, what makes you another aspect of finding your soulmate is what makes you extraordinary? What are the things that you bring to the table? And this is a really hard topic for most people to deal with, because we tend to be much better at looking outward than we do inward. And when we start to look inward, we don't always like what we see. Excuse me here. Ah, sinuses. It's allergy season up here. We're starting to get into the fall allergies. Anyway, um, we have to be we have to be uh, aware of what we bring to the table. What are some of the things that you're good at? What are some of the things that you like to do? What can you offer to a mate? Are you a handyman? Are you a seamstress? Are you, what are the things that you like to do? Do you both like to motorcycle ride? Do you both like to dance? You know, what is it that makes you interesting? What is it, where are the places that you've traveled? And so many of the things that we do uh, eh, can make you an interesting person. It doesn't necessarily mean what you've read, what you do for a living. It could be the places that you've traveled. It could be the adventures that you've had. It could be the experiences. It could have been you being a roadie for a rock band in the 70s or 80s or 90s. It could be any number of things. It just depends on what experiences, and how do you present those experiences to somebody else. How does it make you extraordinary to them? And so these are things that you have to figure out. Again, what do you bring to the table? What do you have to offer? And that's different for everyone. For me, I can use myself as an example. I enjoy sailing. I enjoy snow skiing. I enjoy RVing. I enjoy bonfires. I enjoy baking. I enjoy these are just a few of the things that I like. I enjoy doing home improvement projects. I enjoy working with my hands. The you know Again, these are some of the things that I bring to the table. What are the things that you think about? What are the things that you bring to the table for your situation? And you don't have to do any of the things that I do. It's just those are my examples. I enjoy flying. It would be nice to actually get back in an airplane and fly again. Somewhere down the road. Um, One of the other things that I find very important is to maintain flexibility. When you're looking for your soulmate, you have to remain flexible. One of the excuse me. As we get older, as we've been single for a longer period of time, we tend to get fixed in our ways. We tend to get pretty rigid. And in some cases, a number of people that I talked to said, "Nope, I'm not changing for anyone." And well, when you put it that way, you're blocking virtually everyone out of your life. Yet you can say you want somebody in your life, but yeah, that's probably not going to happen if you say you're not willing to change for anyone. There has to be compromises. You have to adjust to somebody being in your space or you being in their space. You have to adjust to doing laundry together or doing your own laundry separately. Doesn't make any difference, but you have to adjust. You have to, when you get to that point of moving in together or hopefully get it after marriage, you have to learn to adjust to be in a new space together. It's it could be just working in the kitchen, doing things in the kitchen without running over each other. It could be what are the things your responsibilities? Do you help doing the lawn care, or do you help around the house with the cleaning, the vacuuming? It's running a household or maintaining a household takes, I mean, you can do it with one person, but it goes a lot quicker when there's two of you working at it. And when you find that right person, there should be a coming together of energy, of assets, of what again, what do you bring to the table, using those assets that you bring to the table. And I'm not talking about dollars and cents. I'm talking about your talents and those types of things that you bring to the table that you can help. Can you do laundry? Guys, can you do laundry? Can you do her laundry? Now there's probably some things that she'll want to do on her own, because I know from my experience I can be a little rough on laundry. Although I think I'm pretty good, but not bad. But I also iron. It's very few people iron anymore, and so if you need something ironed, I can iron. So that's a unique skill that I bring to a relationship. Now I also realize that in as we age, I know for me, I snore. And that might mean I have to I have to be flexible in that I may not sleep in the same room with her. It might mean that it could be bad enough that she can't sleep. And if that's the case, I'll gladly go sleep in another room so that she can sleep. We have plenty of other time to have fun. But the idea is that you have to be flexible. It's does all of your makeup and all of your stuff need to be on the counter or on the vanity? Or is that something that can be put away? If I'm going to clean the bathrooms, I like the vanity or the counter relatively free of stuff, because face it, ladies, you got a ton of stuff that you use. Guys, we have we have shampoo and a bar of soap or a bottle of body wash in the shower, and some shaving cream and a razor, and that's not much more than that. And then so we're pretty simple when it comes to those kinds of things. So again, can you be flexible? What is it that you can offer? What is it you can bring to the table that allows you to be flexible? And it's not that you have to give a lot, but you have to be willing to compromise on certain things. You have to be willing to share space. And that's just critically important. If you can't share space, and I look at my dad and his wife, they were married, gosh, I think for 20 years or 25 years. And after 5 years, they couldn't live together anymore. They stayed married, but they lived in separate houses. You talk about coming from a dysfunctional family. Holy moly. But those types of things happen. Neither one of them were flexible enough to make that work where they could live in the same house. So from that, from my dysfunctional family, I learned a lot. It's mostly what not to do. So those are, that's another aspect of finding your soulmate. Are you flexible enough to, if you've been single long enough, if you've been single more than 5 years, you've started to set in your ways. And are you flexible enough to let somebody in? What else? Actively, you have to be, and not just actively not just be an active participant, but you have to actively be seeking dates. And ladies, this goes for you too. And so many times, ladies, I hear you say, well, I'm old fashioned. I want him to make all the moves. I want him to initiate. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the history of dating. It's less than 150 years ago. The lady most time initiated the introduction. She initiated the contact. So, and she would be walking by and drop her handkerchief, and the man would say, "Oh, ma'am, you dropped your handkerchief." "Oh, did I?" "Oh," and that's the way it started. Before that, it was arranged marriages. So, but there was through the 17 and 1800s and into the early 1900s, that's the way dating worked. Is women would give men a clue, and today women don't want to give men a clue, and it's so difficult for us to know whether you're interested or not. There are so many different signals that we all send off, that we all give off, and it's often difficult to determine whether it's just, "Hey, hi, how are you?" or it's, "Hi, I'd like to get to know you," kind of a look. And it's, it only happens when you talk to each other. And so, ladies, don't be afraid to initiate a conversation with a guy, because I'll tell you, ladies, guys are dumb as a box of rocks when it comes to trying to figure out whether you're interested or not. It's just that simple. We are dumb creatures. And I know, because I'm one of them. I can be totally oblivious to somebody approaching me or coming on to me. There's some that are totally obvious, but that's another story. The idea is to at least give us a hint that you're interested, that give us a hint that you'd like to have a conversation, or just come up and start talking to us and say, hey, how's your night? What's your, how's your week been? What do you do? And start asking questions. It's very easy to start a conversation. Do you come here often? Is this a good place to get a burger? Is this, what do you find good on the menu? What do you, if you're at a Starbucks, you can say, this is what I normally get, but I'm looking to change. What's your favorite on the menu? So the conversations are relatively easy to start. You just have to have the courage to step up and start those conversations. Now, ladies, it's not all on you. The guys need to show some interest too. And guys, the same thing applies to you. If you have an interest in a lady, you have to step up and start a conversation. The conversation may not necessarily go the way you thought. And I guarantee you guys, you're going to say something, you're going to say that you're going to regret, you're going to embarrass yourself. I know I've done it dozens of times, but guess what? I'm still here. It didn't kill me. I survived. And, I can still get embarrassed by some of the things that I've said if I pick out particular conversations and said, oh my gosh, that was just the dumbest thing to say. Well, we all make that mistake. And we have to be vulnerable to a certain extent. We can't protect our hearts. We can't protect our emotions, our ego to such an extent that nobody can get through. We can't build up a wall that big and that thick to protect the heart. Because when you build up walls around you, guess what? Not only are you staying safe, but you're also keeping out the love that you're looking for. Because out there is your love. Out there is your soulmate somewhere. And I firmly believe that we all have multiple soulmates. And it's just a matter of which one you find first. Is she going to be around the block? Is she going to be at for those of you in the Kansas City area, at Mo Country? I think that's the name of it now. Are they going to be at the dock on Saturday taking sailing lessons? Are they going to be at the shooting range on Saturday taking shooting lessons? Are they going to be where? What when you make your list of must-haves, what does that list look like? What does your partner, your future partner, look like? What characteristics does she need to have, and where are you going to find somebody like that? And where are they most likely to be hanging out? Are they art lovers? Are they going to be hanging out at an art gallery or a museum, or are they going to be on a four-wheeler? There's a lot of up here. There's a lot of four-wheeling. Now, I'm not sure in other parts of the country, but there's a lot of four-wheelers. There's a lot of side-by-sides, and there's a lot of that goes on. There's a lot of snowmobiling that goes on. There's a lot of skiing that goes on up here. So if those are the types of things that you like, those are the types of activities that you need to participate in. If you like listening to music, what are your favorite places to go listen to music? Is it, and again, I'm referring to the Kansas City area, is it the Phoenix? Or is it what is it, 19th and Vine? Is it the Jazz District? Hey, Mary, thanks for joining in. And Mary says, that's the question. Where do we find someone? All I find is heavy drinkers. Well, Mary, I don't know if you were here early on in the conversation, but is that what you're focusing on? Is that part of I don't want a drinker. I don't want a heavy drinker. And if that's what you're focusing on, then those are the types of guys that you're going to find. If alcohol's a problem, or has been a problem in your life, you might say must be alcohol free. And when you start focusing on must be alcohol free, guess what? The heavy drinkers go by the wayside, and you'll start recognizing those guys that don't drink. And then the other thing is to start hanging around in places where, oh, okay. And Mary says she tuned in too late. So, and that's all right. Well, this is a good follow up, because other people tune in late also. It's the thing. It goes back to the reticular activating system in the I think it's in the back of the brain. And what it does is, Mary, is it focuses, or it causes us to recognize the things that we think about. In your case, if heavy drinkers are a problem, and you don't want to find heavy drinkers, well, when you say all I find are heavy drinkers, well, guess what you're focusing on? You're focusing on heavy drinkers. So change that focus to must be alcohol free, or must be no more than social drinkers. And then you start weeding out those that don't fit that criteria. And it's not always as simple. You'll still run across heavy drinkers, but they'll be far fewer in nature and in number. And these are the things that you write down on your must-have list. And your must-have list is the list of things that are absolutely non-negotiable in your next relationship. And I do mean non-negotiable. If you have a list of 20 must-haves and he has 19, the first word out of your mouth should be next, because he doesn't have everything that you're looking for. And you might say, "Oh, Rick, that's so cold. That's so cruel." No, it's not, because what you're doing is you're looking out for yourself. You're not looking out for everybody else. You need to be focusing on what's right for Mary, what's right for my relationship. And if in this case he's missing one thing, well, that's one thing that I guarantee you, it may not be a problem today, tomorrow, but 5 years down the road, or 10 years down the road, it's going to be an issue. You're going to say at some point, I wish I would have held out. I wish I would have waited for someone that had this characteristic too. Now, I'll also tell you, and I tell you all, that and I've talked to well over 100 couples that are in an extraordinary relationship or a soulmate relationship, and every one of them, every single person, has said virtually the same thing, almost to a T, that their partner has brought more to the table than they ever could have imagined. So it doesn't, if a list of 20 must-haves scares you, don't let it, because your partner, your soulmate, will bring more to the table than what's on your list. And I'm just using 20 as a number. It doesn't mean you have to have 20. You have to come up with 20 things. No, it's just a number. I have a very dear friend that has 5 things on her list. That's it. Me, I've got 35 on my list. And I've worked with clients that have had 60 something on their list. And that's okay. It's their list. And the longer the list, the more difficult it is to find. But it has to be what's important to you. It doesn't make any difference. And don't let any of the naysayers talk you out of creating this list. And the naysayers will all say, "Oh, Mary, you're too picky," or but you're not. You're looking for what you want in a relationship, and the ones that are telling you that you're too picky are the ones that settled. They're the ones that they may be in an okay marriage, but they're still single, and they go through their share of their share of dates or their share of relationships, but it's because they're not picky enough. And that's the whole idea, is that you use the must-have list and your deal breaker list as the boundaries that you set for yourself. They're the standard that you use to for dating. If they don't meet this criteria, if they don't meet this standard, then the best they're going to get is one date, and one date only. I guarantee you go through a lot of one and dones when you use this process, but it will keep you out of the toxic relationships. It will keep you out of the bad date, most of the bad dates, because there's a lot of this stuff you can talk out ahead of time just by asking simple questions. You don't need to read through the list, but you can just have conversations. What are your hobbies? What are the things that you like to do? Do you have what do you do for a living? I mean, that's a good one to find out if he has a job or she, and now for some of us at this age, having a good income, having a job may not be as important, because for those of you that are my age and maybe older, mid 60s, you're kind of aging out of the workforce. Me, I've never envisioned retirement. I've just always thought about working. It's the way my dad was. He worked until I think he was in his mid to late 70s before he finally retired. And and even then he was still tinkering with some of the stuff that he loved. He was a baker by trade, and he kept playing with bakery stuff, and he would start selling stuff online at Christmas time, and so he never really truly retired. And I envision myself the same way. So, when you date somebody, you might find out, well, do you ever, when do you plan on retiring, or do you retire? And, what does retirement look like? What are some of the activities you want to do as you get older? Do you want to work full time, or do you want to work part time? These are all things that you can all things that you can find out in casual conversation, without asking specific questions like, are you financially stable? Are you financially secure? These are questions that you can ask a little bit later down the road. Is do you have any financial problems? Is there anything financially that I should be aware of? Are there any health problems that I should be aware of? When you get to know each other a little bit, these are things that you can ask and be more specific on. But in general, to start with, the first few conversations, you can learn a lot just by asking open-ended questions, letting them talk. And then you can go back and look at your list and say, well, he didn't have that, or he presented this warning sign, or I saw this red flag. This is something that's a deal breaker. And then you can end the right then and there. It's easy to do. It's much easier to do, and it's so much easier to end quote unquote relationship after the first date, or the first couple of dates, than it is a month, 2 months, 6 months down the road. It's just and the whole idea is that you want to put yourself in a position to be able to be available for your soulmate when they walk into your life. And they'll walk into your life in one way, shape, or form. I mean, you'll cross paths somewhere. You may cross paths multiple times. But if you're locked up in a mediocre relationship, you're going to cross paths, and it's two ships in the night. They just pass. So the idea is that with everything that I teach, is to keep you open and available, and emotionally available, that you can spot your soulmate or your extraordinary relationship when it comes along. But you have to be available. You have to be present. And you can't do that when you're locked up in a toxic relationship. But anyway, thanks for being here, Mary, and Jacqueline, I know, has already left, and for all of the others that have popped in and out, I appreciate you. We're nearly at the top of the hour. I hope this was informative. I hope this was a good conversation for you. And if you have any questions, just feel free to direct message me, through Facebook or not Instagram, LinkedIn or YouTube, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. Or if you have suggestions for other topics, feel free to send those along to me also, because I'd love to make sure that I'm talking about the things that you want to talk about. Anyway, that'll wrap it up for today. I hope you all enjoyed today. Thank you all for joining in. I hope you all have a great and blessed week, and I love you guys, and we'll see you next week. And I will be in Kansas. I'll be back in my RV, so I'm really looking forward to that. So anyway, have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday for Monday Mastery.